You hear it all the time, right? The relationship between India and the United States, it's this great partnership of shared values. But is it really a genuine friendship, or is it more of a marriage of convenience? Well, that's the big question we're diving into today.
Yeah, we hear this stuff constantly. Things like America is India's true friend, or all this talk about shared democratic values. It's plastered all over headlines and in big speeches. And, it paints this really rosy picture of a deep, meaningful friendship.
But what if that's not the whole story? What if, behind all the handshakes and the friendly headlines, this whole thing is driven less by friendship and way more by just cold, hard strategy?
So, to get to the bottom of it, we really have to dig deeper than just the surface level stuff. We need to look at the history, at the actual patterns of behavior. And when you do that, well, a very different picture starts to take shape.
Okay, so let's start by rewinding the clock. The whole argument we're unpacking here is that from the very beginning, right from India's independence, the US wasn't really looking for a friend, it was looking for an asset.
So, take a look at this timeline. It lays out four really critical moments that put this relationship to the test. We're going to walk through each one because they all tell a really important piece of this story. It all kicks off in 1947. The world is basically splitting into two teams, the US and the Soviet Union. But India decides to choose its own path, something called non-alignment. And that was a big problem for America. See, America wanted allies who would just fall in line, but India flat out refused to be a follower. So, what happens when India takes this independent stance? Well, the US makes a very clear choice. Its preferred partner in the region? It wasn't the world's biggest democracy, India. Nope, it was Pakistan. Pakistan got the military aid, the weapons, the whole deal. Okay, let's jump forward to 1962. China attacks India. And what does the US do? It offers some words of concern, a little bit of help, but that's it. It stopped right there. There was no real commitment, no long-term backing. It was basically all talk, an opportunity to maybe gain some influence, but it definitely wasn't a real partnership. Now, this next part is absolutely crucial. We're in 1971. India steps in to stop a horrific genocide in what is now Bangladesh. And America? It didn't decide with Pakistan on paper. No. It sent its 7th Fleet with the aircraft carrier USS Enterprise right into the Bay of Bengal. Let's be clear. This wasn't just a political move. This was a direct military threat aimed at India. India didn't back down and ultimately won the war. But that moment, it left a deep, lasting scar. Because, nations just don't forget something like that. A moment of betrayal. It really showed everyone where America's priorities were, with its strategic piece on the chessboard, no matter what. And then we get to 1998. India conducts nuclear tests, basically to secure its own defense. A true friend might have understood, right? But the US response wasn't support. It was punishment. We're talking harsh economic sanctions, a technology blockade. The message couldn't have been clearer. You do not act without our say-so. So you see, these aren't just one-off events. The argument is that they form a much bigger pattern, a pattern of double standards and constant pressure that you could say is still playing out today. Just look at the issue of terrorism. This comparison is pretty stark. On one side, you've got decades of American aid pouring into Pakistan. On the other side, when India was the victim of attacks, what it got was concern. The painful takeaway here, according to this view, is that American strategic goals always came before the value of Indian lives. And it's not just about double standards. There's also this charge of direct interference. This perspective points to how certain NGOs, think tanks, and media narratives, plus some very selective human rights reports, always seem to put India under a microscope while often giving a free pass to other US allies. So that makes you wonder, right? What's the real intent here? When you see these reports pop up, is it about genuine concern, or is it actually a form of political pressure, a tool to try and get India to change its policies? Okay, so if the history is so full of tension, why is everything so friendly all of a sudden? Why the big change? Well, according to this perspective, the answer is just one word: China. Yep, that's it, plain and simple. The whole argument is that America's newfound warmth toward India isn't some big change of heart. It's about strategic necessity. It's about needing a powerful partner to counter China's growing influence on the world stage. And you can see the evidence everywhere, right? All of a sudden, India is a natural partner?
You've got these strategic groups like the Quad getting a ton of attention. This is about more than just trade, it's about building a democratic bloc in Asia. But the key point here, the big takeaway, is that this is a partnership of necessity. It's about containing a rival, not about building on a foundation of trust.
Which brings us to the final piece of this puzzle. How does today's India view this whole situation? Well, the response isn't about feelings or history. It's 100% strategic. The India of today is often described as confident, assertive, and it's easy to see why. It's not just about a strong economy anymore. It's about turning that economic muscle into real strategic independence. It's building its own defense industry, it has crystal clear national priorities, and it has a leadership that's laser-focused on India's interests. This India doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't get emotional about geopolitics. It gets strategic.
So the new mantra is pretty straightforward. Cooperate, but never depend.
Partner, but never follow.
Because at the end of the day, self-reliance is the only real security. And that leaves us with a pretty big final thought. If this perspective is right, the India-US relationship isn't about emotion. It's a transaction. America does what's best for America, and India does what's best for India. So the question is this the future of all global alliances? Transactional, not emotional. Strategy, not friendship.